Hi guys, so if you work with JavaScript, you may or may not have heard of Gatsby JS, or more broadly, static site generators. They're becoming quite popular now, but you might be wondering, what is Gatsby? How does it work? And why would I want to use it for any of my projects? So in this video, I'm going to walk you through a simple website I've made with Gatsby that comes with Netlify CMS. I'm going to show you how to edit it and how to change it and adapt it in all the ways you'd want to help get you introduced to the framework. So recently, I've been seeing a lot of newsletter sites spring up. I think it's quite trendy now to newsletters have made a comeback. So I think a simple newsletter site is something that'll help you learn about the framework and might be something you can launch today if you wish. So we're going to use Netlify to host our site. The main benefit of Netlify is that it's super easy to use and deploy a website really quickly. It also comes with a free headless CMS that allows you to update content without having to use Git. So it's great for, if you've got a client who just wants a simple website and they're not technical, Netlify is a good option for you. So now I'm just going to walk you through the site. It's called the Ultimate Gatsby Newsletter Starter Kit. It's really fast. It's got a simple form where users can subscribe. You're going to want to replace that with the form from the email tool that you're using. Then it's got an archive. The archive is just a typical blog structure. So here's an index page and it's got single posts. You can have tags and it's got a simple about page. So there it is. It's really, really simple, the site. And as you can probably see, the site's super fast. And that's because Gatsby is a static site generator and it's built on something called the Jamstack. And the Jamstack advertises itself as a modern architecture where you can create fast and secure sites. Now the Jam stands for JavaScript. So I'm hoping you know what that is already, but essentially it refers to anything that's dynamic in our site. APIs, so talking to a backend or database of some description. For example, when you sign in or add a user to a database, that's going to require an API to fetch and send the data. And then also we've got markup. So markup languages are designed for processing and presenting text. This includes graphics too. For example, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. And the markup that Gatsby uses is called markdown, which is a bit confusing, but it is what it is. It's also a markup language. So let's head over now to the Gatsby site. I'm not going to give a full in-depth explanation about what Gatsby is, because I think there are people who've done that already and can do it better than I can. But we'll just go through the basics of what a static site generator is and how it's different from a traditional server rendered site. So the main difference between Gatsby and a traditional server rendered site is that it's really, really fast. So let's just imagine you're setting up a new website on WordPress. When the user requests a page from a site built on a traditional server-rendered CMS, like WordPress or Drupal, the request is going to be sent to a server, and WordPress is going to build that page from templates, from data in the database, from plugins, and it's going to send that HTML page back to the user. But on every request, WordPress is going to have to build the page from scratch, unless it's been cached beforehand, and therefore it's static. So on the other hand, a static site generator takes input, and let's just scroll down here because here's where Gatsby kind of explains how it works. So here it says CMSs, but in this case the CMS is going to be headless, where it's going to have a different, the front end will be decoupled from the back end, which is a bit of a different setup than if you're launching a normal WordPress site. So as you can see, there can be data sources here, which can either be markdown or just data from anywhere, basically. And the static site generator takes that input, and it's usually in the form of markdown files, and it will be in the case of the site that we're building, and it generates HTML files. Then the whole site is uploaded to a web server or a CDN, and it's already fully built when you deploy it, and that's why it's so fast when someone requests a page. So when someone navigates to a URL, the server finds that single file and renders it for the user on the front end. As soon as the user starts interacting with the site, the JavaScript kicks in and it becomes a normal single page application. So Gatsby is actually built on React, and it also uses GraphQL to render the data. As you can see here, React, GraphQL. If you don't know what those two frameworks are, they were invented at Facebook or created at Facebook, and it might be worth looking at them first, but if you just want to see what Gatsby is all about, I still think this video can be really useful for you as well. It's worth mentioning that Gatsby is SEO optimized. One of the problems with single page applications, or one of the challenges, has been making sure that search engines can index the pages as normal. So you might have heard of server-side rendering, which aims to kind of address this issue. Anyway, Gatsby can be parsed by search engines as you'd expect, and it's all good in that respect. So no problems there. So one of the really great things about Gatsby is that it's got a great community, and quite a big community now. And what that means is that you've got a lot of starter kits to choose from. So if you just want to explore the framework, or you want to launch your own project, there's a lot of boilerplate you can use to do that. The project we're using today is based on this starter kit. It's a template created by Netlify, and it comes with a Netlify CMS. So the site I've launched is deployed on Netlify, and basically the story was my friend had a really simple newsletter project he wanted to launch. I've been looking at Gatsby to create the project with, and I wanted to find a CMS as well. He's non-technical, so he wanted to upload content and didn't want to have to go through Git. And I found Netlify, and I was really surprised by how quickly I could get something up and running and out of the door. And it's got a really nice interface too. Basically, you simply commit, push to GitHub or whatever you're using, and Netlify will automate a build for you, which is I think a really nice way to work. So it's really simple, and they also have a CMS website which you can check out if you want. So here is a separate website, and you can check out how that works. Here, I'm not going to go into that in too much depth, but we are going to see how it works and how you can upload content via the CMS. And don't worry, Netlify aren't sponsoring me to say any of this. Which brings me on to the actual sponsors of this project. So I work with a company called Looms Eyewear for some technical stuff. They're a computer glasses company. I'm actually wearing some now. They work really well. If you look at screens all day, or you're a developer, whatever, you can check them out. There's a link in the footer of this project. So let's get to GitHub and start looking at some code. Here we are at my profile. My profile is RK Development 111. And I've created 3 different repositories for this project. So the first repository is the project that's live at the moment. If you go to this URL, you'll be able to see the live project. Let's just close that Jamstack website. And let's go back to the other repositories. I've also created a repository that shows the edits that are about to be made in this video. So if you don't want to code along and you just want to watch the video and download the repository after and explore the edits that were made, use this repository. And finally, I've created a code along version. So this is the project I'm going to use now, and if you want to code along, I would advise you use this version too. So I'm just going to hop over to Netlify now, and I'd advise that you create an account. You can create an account using GitHub. It's super simple. So here's the site that's live at the moment, the site that's been deployed. And I'm just going to create a new site from that GitHub repository that I've just shown you, the code along repository. So what you want to do is clone that repository and then follow the same process that I'm about to do now. So click on GitHub. It's already authorized. And then here you can see a list of the repositories in my profile. The great thing is you don't have to give Netlify access to all of your repositories. You can specify which ones, which is great. Here is the code along version, so we're just going to authorize Netlify to deploy that, or instruct, I should say. And what's going to happen now is Netlify is going to run a build of that site and deploy it on a Netlify subdomain with this URL. So if we hop down to here, we can actually see the build in progress. So there it is, building away. We're not going to watch this. In fact, we're going to launch the project locally now. So let's just head over to the project, so here is the project now. Let's just open it up in Sublime Text. Before running it locally, I just want to walk you through the file structure, so I think that's really useful to understand how Gatsby structures things. So here's Gatsby Node.js. That's where, or the logic for how Gatsby creates pages. I'm not going to go into too much depth because Gatsby explains it really well in its docs. But here is the logic for how pages are created. In the Gatsby config.js file, this is where the logic for the plugins live. So here you can see plugins like React Helmet, SAS, and I think that's one of the really great things about Gatsby, that it's got a really rich plugin ecosystem. So if you're building a really simple project, you're not going to be wanting for functionality in terms of plugins. Then if we go to the static folder, we've got some static assets in the image folder. In the admin, we've got a config file, and that's basically specifying the fields that are available in our CMS. So the source folder, that is where the main project lives. And it's just a React application. So if you go to the index page, you can just see it's JSX, like you're used to if you've coded with React before. Here are the pages. As I was discussing Markdown earlier, Gatsby uses Markdown for its data. So here you can see the About page, and this is the text of the About page written in Markdown. The Lambda folder is something to do with AWS serverless functions. I'm not going to go into that today, but that's something you can look up on the Netlify site should you wish. An image folder, and then we have components like you'd find in any other React application. So the classic stuff like navbar, footer, layout. You can obviously create whatever you want in there. And then there's a CMS folder where the logic for previewing posts lives. So you can preview posts in the CMS, and this is the logic for it. So now let's head over to, before we deploy, let's just make sure our site has deployed in Netlify. So it looks like all has gone well, and there it is. Clever Carson. So our site's now live, which is really great. So the repository that I showed you before is now live, the code along repository, and it's live at this URL. When you deploy your site, you'll have a different there'll be a random name there that will be different to what is shown here, but it'll essentially be the same thing. It's going to be deployed on a Netlify subdomain. Now I'm going to start up the project locally as well. So the way we do that is npm run start, and that should get things up and running on our local system as well. And when that's ready, it should be available on localhost 8000. So let's check. It's still booting up. And there we go. So now we have set up our environment. We've got Gatsby live on Netlify, and we've also got a local version of Gatsby running on localhost 8000. So now let's dive into the project and start editing it. Okay, so now we're ready to start adding and editing our code base. So let's go into the project. I've got the index page open here. It's written in JSX because it's a React. The project is written in React. Gatsby uses React. This project also comes with hot reloading out of the box. So whenever I make a change and I save that change, it's going to show on the locally hosted project. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a paragraph tag to our project, and I'm just going to hard code it into this page, and so you can see the hot reloading in action. So you don't have to watch me coding, I've compiled a few snippets which I'm just going to paste in. If it's anything complex, I'm going to explain what's happening, so nothing will remain unexplained. Okay, so I've just pasted a paragraph tag below our subheading. I'm going to save it. And let's go to our localhost, and there you can see the paragraph has been added, so it's got some styles as well, and it's blue. So ideally, if you're coding in Gatsby, you're not going to want to hard code paragraphs. Instead, you're going to want to add them via the markdown files associated with each page. So here is the markdown file associated with the index page. So I've actually been developing, and I've had a few issues with the cache. So when I'm adding things to the markdown, I've had basically when I've added something, I've been getting a few errors based on the cache being out of sync. So I'd advise, if you're adding markdown, just use Control and C, and that'll close the project, and then you can use npm run clean, and that's going to delete the cache and the public directories, so you can start afresh. So we're just going to head into the indexmd file, and what I'm going to do is add some paragraph data that I prepared earlier. I'm just going to paste it in there, and then I'm going to add that paragraph here in this index file. So you're probably wondering, how does Gatsby get the data from the markdown file and pull it into this file? And this is where GraphQL comes in. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the paragraph field here, and essentially anything in this file is called front matter. It's what Gatsby calls front matter, and what GraphQL does in Gatsby pages or components is it takes the data from that front matter and makes it available in components. So in this file we have two components. We have the index page component, and we also have a child component, which is the index page template component. So now we have the paragraph data available to us here. So what I'm going to do is just add that as a prop here, and call it paragraph. And I'm also going to add two prop types. So it's a string, which is the validation, and then we're also going to add it as a prop that's being passed down from the index page component to the index page template component. So now we have this available. What I'm going to do is put it in here. So it's going to be rendered here, hopefully. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to start up Gatsby again. So for some reason that is throwing an error. Let's see if we can figure out what's going wrong. So as I was mentioning before, it doesn't actually seem to be anything wrong with the code we've written, and it could be a caching issue. So what I'm going to do is clean the cache again, and then I'm going to start up Gatsby again and see if that makes a difference. And yeah, as I said, this time it was a caching issue, so it seems to have worked now. If you do run into caching issues, just use the clean command, which will delete the cache and get things up and running again. I think it has a tendency to get out of sync. It's a stability issue, and I think the Gatsby team is aware of it because there is an issue on GitHub that's live at the moment. I think other people have noticed that this kind of thing is happening more often than it should, essentially. So that is that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a font. So now we know how to add markdown data to our components. Let's add a new font. So the font we're using at the moment is Merriweather. But let's add a new one. In fact, let's stop the project. And the way we're going to add a font is using a library called TYPEFACES JS. And I think this repository is actually by the Gatsby author, Carl Matthews. And it says here why, because so what this library enables is for us to be able to self-host our fonts on Gatsby. And it's really simple. It's essentially just got a folder full of fonts, and we can just choose whichever one we want. So let's choose a random one, Amico, and we can use the command yarn add typeface. And how do we spell Amico? Can't even find it. Here it is, Amico. Right. Yarn add, no. Okay, so that typeface is being installed. So what we can do is head back over to our project while that typeface is installing. And we can go to the layout file, the layout component. So this is the component that's basically wrapping all the other pages or components within our application. So it's where we can add the font. Here you can see I've added Merriweather. So all we need to do now is import the typeface we've just used, or just added, I should say. And then we can just change the font family. So now hopefully if we start up Gatsby, we should see a different font on our project. And there we go. So there is Amico, and that's how you add a new font. So that's all worked as expected. Now I'm going to add a new component. And before I do that, I'm going to close down Gatsby again so there's no caching issues. So let's just do that. Let's clear the console. And let's start adding a new component. So I've actually got a component ready to go here. And what we can do is we can just head over into, so this is just standard React stuff, but it'll lead to something which you might want to know about Gatsby. So how to add multiple items to an MD or a markdown file. So let's just paste that in there, and we'll save it as my new index page. So we've got our index page component now. What I'm going to do is just import it here. And I'm just going to include it, where should I put it? Let's put it below here. Actually, let's put it outside the p tag. So if we save it now, hopefully we should see save and build. We should see a new component on our index page. So let's give it a bit of time to boot up. And there we go. So there is our new component. So this is pretty standard React stuff, but what I do want to show you is how to then add a data object with multiple fields. So what you can do is you can use, and then we can call that data, that markdown data, into our component using the map function. So let me show you how we're going to do that. And I'm actually just going to close down Gatsby again, just so we don't run into any more caching issues. So here we've got some data. I've called it multiple items just for clarity. I'm just going to add that to our index markdown file. And before I forget, let me just clean the cache. Here we go. And I also have a fully functional React component pre-built. So here we go. Essentially what it's doing is taking the props from the index page, which I'm about to add, and then rendering them here. So let's add that functionality to the index page now. And so what we're going to do, as usual, is go down to the GraphQL query, and we're going to request multiple items. And we're going to request the fields on multiple items. And final paragraph. Then we're going to add multiple items here. And then we're going to add it as a prop, which is being passed down from the layout, the main layout page component again. And then what we can do is we can just include it. I've called it grid items. the prop, and we're going to pass down multiple items as the grid items prop. So as you can see, it's being passed down, and what map is going to do is just going to go through each of those items and render this code here. So let's check if that's worked. And there we go. So you can see that the component is rendering those items, each one as a separate piece of data with each separate prop. So here's the title, the description, and the final paragraph item. Obviously the styling needs sorting out, but this hopefully serves as a demonstration of how you can write markdown. So let's just hop back over to the markdown file, and we can just look at the syntax quickly. So if you want to do a nested list, you have multiple items, and then you have the properties of each separate instance. So here's one instance, here's the second instance, and here's the third instance, and what we're using is just a hyphen beforehand to indicate that that's what we want to do, and then that's just being pulled through with this component that we've added. So that's how you do that. Next, we are going to rename a page. Okay, so now you might be wondering how to change a page on Gatsby. So as you can see, the directory, the URL, or the URL structure is just based on the folder name. So we've got the about page, the archive page, the home page, and it's really simple to change the URL structure on Gatsby and rename your pages. So I'm going to show you how to do this now. I'm actually going to stop the local site running. And what Gatsby does is it looks in the source folder, the pages folder, and then either the file or the folder at the top level is how it's going to name your pages. So as you can see, here are the pages that are currently on the site. This is the about page, the archive page, the tags page, and what we're going to do is we're just going to rename this to new page. Okay, now we're just going to run the clean command to delete the cache, and then we're going to run the start command. And hopefully when we navigate to the archive menu item, or the archive which still has the link to the subdirectory archive, it's actually, it should show a 404 now. I think this is still hasn't loaded yet. Let's just see. And there you go, so it's a 404. However, if we go to /new page, we should see the archive directory, and that's what we do see. So it's that simple to change a page on Gatsby. It's just a case of renaming what is in the source pages folder and just changing the names there. So really simple. So now I think it's a good time to actually commit some of the work we've done and see how that affects our deployment build on Netlify. So let's just clear the console. Let's just video edits v2. We can commit that. And I think I'm just going to have to. I'm just going to force a push now. Okay, so I've now committed a new change to my Gatsby site. So let's see how this affects what's going on in Netlify. Now, as you can see, as soon as I've made that commit, Netlify is busy building a new version of the site with the changes I've just committed. So it's a really automated workflow. It's really quick, and I can essentially, I should, when I reload my site, what's it called, Clever Carson, see the changes that we've just made. It's the wrong URL. Let's see if we can find it. Actually, here it is. So I don't think it's built yet, but it is still busy building. And as you can see, it just keeps you updated on the progress, and you can track it. And it doesn't really take long to build, especially if you've got a small site like this. So it's really quick to launch something new. And you also have the option to stop auto-publishing if you want. So if you don't want a site to immediately update once you've committed to Git, then you can also stop this process and take more control of what's going on. Let's refresh this. So here we can see the commit in GitHub. And now I think it's deployed successfully. Yep, the site is live. So let's head over to the URL and see. And when we refresh it, we should see the changes that we've made throughout the course of this video. And there you go. So that's our live site. All we had to do is push a commit to Git, and there you go. It's changed. So that's really Netlify in a nutshell. And it's so simple to get something up and running really quickly, and I was pretty blown away by how easy it really was. Okay, so what we're going to do now is explore the CMS, and you can find your CMS if you go to your deployed URL and you click admin. You will or should find your CMS here. So here are the blog posts, and as you can see, we can just edit them if we want. And when you make an edit and click publish, what it's going to do is it's going to commit to Git, and then obviously Netlify will take over and do an automated build and redeploy your site. And we're not going to click publish just yet. So we've been working in the index page, and as you can see, there's an error here because we've been adding fields and all sorts, and we haven't actually updated our config file and this is the preview part of the CMS, and we also haven't updated the preview logic. So what we want to do now is hop back over to our project and update that. So, and one more thing, in the meantime, I actually changed blog back to archive because that's where the config is looking for the fields for archive. So to be able to get those posts in the blog section, it needs to be called archive. So I've just changed that. Obviously you can change it to blog here if you want, but I want to keep it as archive because this is a newsletter site. So let's now add the relevant fields to the config file. So the first field we want to add is the paragraph field. So we just want to, so we're in, let's just expand this actually. So we're in the landing page, and we want to add label paragraph. So this is the label. This is the label here. So we want one called paragraph. And then this is going to be the name of the data field. So paragraph here with it's lowercase. And then it is a string. Now we also want to add this, which is the multiple items object that we created in the index MD file. So what I'm going to do, I've actually pre-prepared this code in what I made earlier file, because it's quite time consuming to write, but it follows the same pattern. Let's see if we can get that. I think that's all of it. Let's minimize this and go back Okay, so what we're doing here is the same. It's the same format, pretty much the same syntax, and we're just calling this a list instead of a string because it's a list of objects here. So and then we're using the fields are declared in the same way. So the title is a string. It's just like we've done with the paragraph, except it's nested. So let's go ahead and save that. And we now want to also go to the preview file, which is up here somewhere, to the preview template of the index page. And we just want to add so you just want to add paragraph. I think there are actually some fields that when I was editing the original, project, I could have removed. So I think there might be some fields that we don't actually need here. And then we want to do multiple items. And hopefully that should work. So what we want to do now is commit those changes. Add so that should now have pushed. Let's just refresh this to make sure it has. And there it is. So if we hop over to Netlify, we should see a build happening, and it is happening. So let's just wait a second. And in fact, let's go back to our URL here. So now we should have the preview should have the data it needs to be able to construct the preview essentially in the CMS, and we've added paragraph field and we've added the multiple items field to the CMS. So we should have everything we need there now. So fingers crossed, when it rebuilds, those fields will appear in the CMS, and we can edit them and then make a commit. Okay, let's go back to Netlify. Oops. So it's still building. Still building. Get rid of that. And so it looks like the site is live now. So let's refresh it and go to the CMS, and hopefully those changes will have appeared. And there we go. So as you can see, now in the CMS on the landing or on the index landing page, we've got all the fields we want, and we can add to the paragraph or to the multiple items or to the subheading as we want, and we can just commit that. So let's try and commit something now. Let's say, and let's maybe add another multiple item, and let's call it added. This has been added. That's all. And let's now publish that. So once we hit publish, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a git commit, and after the git commit, Netlify is going to rebuild again. So let's just hit publish on this and see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, the entry's being saved. And if we hop over to GitHub now, we should see an update. There we go. So it's update pages index is the commit message. And let's go back to Netlify. And as you can see, it's building a new version of our site. So let's just make sure that all works as we expect it to. And I think this is one of the things to mention is I think this is a really simple workflow, and it really helps if you know not everyone knows how to use Git, especially people who are non-technical. So this is really, I think, a really easy option to get something up and running that you can edit very, very quickly. I think that's really what I thought was so good about Netlify and why I wanted to make this video. So will all be all right? So it looks like it's worked, and there you go. You can see the changes here. So there is the change we just made to the CMS is great, and then you can see as well that there's the new text we added as one of these multiple items instances. So that's great. It's all worked, and that, in fact, one last thing. So once we've committed via the CMS, obviously our local project is going to be out of sync. So what we want to do is just git pull to get those updates, and then that means if you want to do any changes, so if you want to then edit your project locally again, it's all up to date and it's all synced. So that's great, and I think I would say that brings the video to a close. I think it's been really enjoyable. I hope I've showed you what Gatsby can do and how quickly you can get a site up and running with Netlify. So what we've basically learned in this tutorial is what static site generators are, how they work. We've learned that Gatsby is built on React and it just behaves like a normal React application. We've learned how to add markdown to our component, and we've understood how Gatsby gets the data for the components, or that markdown data, or any data, in fact, using GraphQL. And we've also learned how to add a font to represent data, an object in our markdown file, and we now understand how to do continuous deployment and why Netlify is a really quick and easy solution. So, and also if you want to change fields in the CMS and you want to add and remove data, you know how to do that now. So I think they're pretty much the main points that I would want to know if I was developing with a new technology. I think it gives you the tools to be able to develop something fairly basic, fairly quickly, and I think it's a good foundation for doing that. So I hope it's helped. So if you have any questions, just reach out to me on the email in the description, and also I'm going to put all the links or anything I've mentioned from this video in the description too, so you can just find all the information you need. And with that, I'm going to sign off. So happy coding, and see you next time.